2:03 a.m. Caracas, January 3rd, 2026. Streetlights flicker out over La Carlota as the first missiles are already in the air, and a single motorcycle slips out of the Miraflores compound through a service gate nobody thought to watch. 30 minutes earlier, a phone call from Havana warned Nicolas Maduro that the strike window had moved up. He does not go to his usual bunker. He goes north, into the hills above Fort Tiuna, riding in a convoy of 4 identical black SUVs that peel off from each other at every intersection, headlights cutting through smoke that hasn't started yet. The bombs fall anyway. La Carlota Air Base burns first, then the anti-aircraft batteries ringing the capital, then the radar stations that were supposed to see this coming days ago and never did. American F-35s cross Venezuelan airspace, almost unopposed. The Su-30s Venezuela bought from Russia 2 decades earlier never leave the ground. Half of them have been cannibalized for spare parts that stopped arriving years back, and the pilots who could still fly them are asleep in barracks that are no longer there by sunrise. Delta fours fast ropes into the presidential compound at Fort Tiuna 11 minutes after the last bomb falls. The compound is empty. Warm coffee still sits on a desk. No president. What was supposed to be a 2-hour operation becomes a manhunt. By dawn, Southern Command has a problem it never rehearsed for. Special operations teams sweep 3 more suspected safe houses and come up empty. The convoy has scattered into 23 Enero, a hillside neighborhood Maduro's own government built 40 years earlier, where every rooftop has eyes and every alley has a name only the people who live there know. A Black Hawk trying to get eyes over the district takes small arms fire from 3 directions at once and peels off before anyone can even be sure where the shots came from. 2 blocks over, a Humvee patrol hits a barricade of burning tires and overturned carts that wasn't there an hour earlier and has to reverse out the way it came. This isn't the clean, filmed regime change operation the Pentagon rehearsed in a briefing room. This is house to house, and house to house eats fuel, ammunition, and time nobody budgeted for. Not every gate stays shut. A National Guard colonel outside Maracay opens his base rather than watch conscripts die, defending a president who isn't there anymore, trading the keys for a promise that his men walk home instead of into a cell. Word of the deal spreads faster than any American broadcast could. Other units start quietly deciding which side of history they'd rather be standing on before the choice gets made for them. In Havana, Cuban intelligence offers what it actually has: encrypted phone lines, warnings routed through old back channels, radio broadcasts urging Venezuelans to hold the line. What it doesn't have is a single warship that can reach the Caribbean in time to matter. A Russian transport requesting overflight rights gets quietly turned away by 3 different governments in one afternoon. The support Maduro was promised for 20 years arrives as headlines, not as help. By day 3, American casualties are still low, but they aren't 0 anymore, and the story out of Washington has stopped being about a clean 2-hour victory. It's about gunfire in residential blocks a mile from a school, about journalists asking why a surgical strike needed a 10th day, about senators demanding hearings on war powers nobody remembers authorizing. Governments across Latin America that stayed quiet on day 1 start issuing statements by day 4, some careful, some furious. The United Nations Security Council calls an emergency session that changes nothing on the ground, but everything about how this looks from the outside. Every extra day the operation runs is a day the narrative slips further out of the Pentagon's hands. On the 11th day, an informant, paid, not persuaded, gives up the address. Maduro is found in the back room of a shuttered auto shop 3 blocks from the house he grew up in, not in a bunker, not on a yacht, but in the middle of the neighborhood that made him. There's no dramatic final firefight left in him. There's a phone call to a lawyer, a long silence, and then American soldiers walking him out past neighbors filming on their phones, the same phones that spent 11 days telling the story the Pentagon couldn't control. Officially, it's still a victory. Maduro stands trial in New York, same as he did in the real timeline. But 11 days of urban fighting instead of 2 hours and 28 minutes leave something behind a clean decapitation strike never would have. A generation in the collectivos who traded fire with American soldiers block by block and didn't win, but didn't fully lose either. Some of them melt back into the city they were born in, put their rifles under the floorboards, and wait. Some of them never put their rifles down at all. Washington gets its president. It doesn't get its clean ending, and it doesn't get to write the only version of this story that gets remembered in Caracas. Would 11 days of resistance have actually changed what came next for Venezuela? Or just delayed the exact same outcome by a week and a half at a much higher price? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Subscribe. New scenario every 2 days.